Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. On this episode, we have the amazing Paul Butterworth, CEO of Chambers Wales, who's also had a great career across sport before his time with the Chamber. Paul, welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. Can you give us a brief history of your career in sport to date?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Great to join you on the Beautiful Game today. It's a great podcast. As you said, I'm Chief Executive of the of Chambers Wales. We're the Chamber of Commerce for Mid and South Wales, so we're a business representative organisation. We work with businesses across the region. But yeah, as you say, I've had an interesting career across sport prior to the journey into the Chamber, starting literally by moving barrels to Twickenham Rugby Stadium when I was a student, then moving into the office, looking after all the hospitality, all the 152 boxes as it was at the time, and 5 or 6 restaurants, then coming over to Cardiff and Millennium Stadium as it was then, and that fabulous journey with all of the FA Cup finals, the League Cup finals, and intertwined with the rugby, etc. Then my journey took me back to London, to Wembley. So I oversaw the operations at Club Wembley, which is the corporate level. Then back to Cardiff and working for the Welsh Rugby Union, overseeing their event programme. So it's been an exciting career.
Fantastic. And during your time at Twickenham, Wembley and the Millennium Stadium, you must have seen some huge events come through the door. So how much work goes into planning an event with 90,000 plus people, something like an FA Cup final?
Yeah. So if I touch on the FA Cup finals and the process that we went through with Club Wembley, Wembley Stadium and the FA, the FA Cup final is still the jewel in the crown for them. And everything that you do across the year, so from literally the Monday of the FA Cup final, the journey starts again, and you trial different ways of doing things. You tweak your planning, you tweak your debriefs, you tweak your concourse activities. But everything across the journey of that year, whether that be the Carling Cup final, I think it's the Carabao now, the England finals, the concerts, all of that gears up to the FA Cup final, and that culminates in delivering everything that you've trialled during the course of that year. So when you talk about the FA Cup final, it's a 12-month process of meetings and planning and ideas, going to other stadiums and looking at what they do, and bringing that into something that is, still in my mind, one of the most prestigious events in the sporting calendar.
So for the teams, the fans, a couple of weeks before the final, they find out who they're playing. But for the team down there at Wembley, there's the entire 12 months leading up to it where you're planning, you're thinking, you're trying things, you're testing things, so that when that FA Cup final comes around, it is the best version of an FA Cup final it could possibly be. Is that the kind of process?
Yeah. So it's kind of like we already see it in sport already, those marginal gains. And, before this we spoke about Dave Brailsford and Clive Woodward and their marginal gains and trying to do things a little bit different. That also transposes itself over into the event planning side of things and the event delivery. So depending on your leader as well, you've got to really have a good leader within the organisation that has the vision to be able to do that. And I've been able to, in my time, work with some incredible leaders that have given you the freedom to go and bring those ideas, and no idea has been too silly, too stupid, to be able to come back. And we've trialed them, and some of them have worked. But I think the most important thing is we haven't ever been afraid to fail. And if it has failed, we then go and look at it at why it failed. It might be just the wrong event at the wrong time. I remember we had, it's actually, I think it's the K2 guys who are the ball jugglers. We had them on the concourse for one particular game, and the ball went everywhere. fans were trying to get hold of the ball. So we learned from that, and then we just put the guy in a different area, put a bit of rope around him, and it became a massive success. So whilst we didn't really say we'll never do that again, we actually learned from that, debriefed about it, talked about it, thought how we could do it better, and it became a real success. And obviously they went on to massive YouTube success, which I will claim every part of that success.
Absolutely, yeah. Claim every win you can. It's brilliant. It sounds like there's a lot of processes that work for athletes that also work in the kind of wider sporting environment, that creating a safe space to fail, test things, push your boundaries, push your limits, and then a debrief afterwards. So what have we done? What have we learned? How we do things better? Are there a load of processes that you've learned from sport that have gone into management of events around sport?
Yeah, loads. I was talking about this yesterday or with the guys on the Help to Grow program that we're, alumni of, and I think whether that be rugby, whether that be football, it's you all have a job to do. Whether that be the goalkeeper in football, the defender, centre, or second row, whatever that is. And I've taken those principles into work, into a business scenario, and everybody has their job to do. And I believe in very straight lines. So if you are, for example, the accountants, don't get involved with the operations of the business. If your operations don't get involved with the accounts, just pass it over to the expert, because that's what you employ those guys for. So the principles of sport very much fit within business, and that is the responsibility of doing your job, you're doing your job to the best of your ability, but also having the training and the tools to be able to deliver. Because if you're not given the training, if you're not, you can take that principle of the drills that you do in football and rugby, and the weights and etc. You still need to have those principles in work and in business to develop those skills, to develop, to be a better version of yourself every day. And we live by the mantra of 1% every week. So if we can be 1% better every week, then by the end of the year, we'll be 50% better as a whole company. We advocate skills and upskilling and training, and we try to do that as much as we possibly can as well. And so it's creating that environment and that culture that we can really push on. But also, if you have that sense of being able to push forward, then the ideas come because everyone feels secure. And then we get those ideas, which, sometimes, we try them and they are a bit silly and they are a bit wacky. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But it's that culture that we are developing to be able to say, actually, nothing is too wacky, nothing is too out there that we can, that we can't do within business that is getting those marginal gains.
That's it. And I think you've got to find those opportunities to test things, test your limits, try different things. I know that when I was speaking to Robert Earnshaw a couple of weeks ago, he said that when he was training for Cardiff City and his other clubs, he was always trying different things in training. And more often than not, they didn't come off, but he was practicing things, he was trying
Yeah.
things. And he didn't realize that most of his teammates didn't train that way. They were like, I need to run X amount of miles, I need to put in X amount of graft, and I'll be where I need to be. And Rob says that if you'd have watched him training, you'd be thinking, he's taken 10 shots, he's missed 8 of them. Like, this is a prolific striker, what's going on? But he was trying different things, trying different techniques, trying different ways of striking the ball, different ways of running at defenders, things like that. And then some of those things would work and he developed them. And then 6 months later, you'd see them out on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like it's a very similar process to how Robert Earnshaw trained and learned to score hat tricks.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't risk doing something, sometimes you never know if it pays off. It is developing that culture to be able to go away and improve yourself. And I'm lucky in my position up until my journey now to being a leader now. I've had some incredible leaders in the past. I can name a few off the top of my head, but they've always had the faith to be able to improve the business. And I've taken elements of each and every one of them over the course of time, and then implemented them into my own leadership style. Some have been very disciplinarian, so I'll get that out. Some have been really relaxed, and somewhere in between. But the best culture it is from a really open leader that gives you the values to go and improve things, rather than keep you in your place. So I think the last few years in terms of management style and the way that society is evolving to be much more open about talking about your health and well-being, is now benefiting, our society. You talk about athletes at the real top end of their business. Rest is as important as anything, to make sure that they get the rest in between the training to make sure they get the maximum output. When I first started in events, and this is the brutal reality of events, is that it was this macho work as many hours as you possibly can. I did the most amount of steps, and many event professionals will measure the success of an event by the amount of steps that they've done on a day. And you can literally, a quiet event, you'll be doing, I don't know, 20,000 steps in a day. And then you can gear it up to kind of 25,000-ish for a Six Nations. And then you go 30,000 plus for a Champions League final or something like that. So, you can almost measure your steps at the level of the event as well. But that it's now become much more important to make sure that you get the time down, to not to work 7 days a week, which sometimes is a bit of a problem in my role. But taking that time to spend with family and getting that nurturing side back in, mindfulness as well, which is so much more importantly, or much more important and understood these days, to get the performance out the back end.
Yeah, rest, relaxation, letting your muscles, letting your brain kind of relax, so it's kind of fresh to go the next day, is just as important as training. Let me take you back to those FA Cup final days a little bit. So I'd imagine as a player on FA Cup final morning, you wake up, you got butterflies, you're going in, you're kind of warming up, you're putting your kit on, you're walking down that tunnel at Wembley, and the crowd's roaring. You could be nervous, you could be excited. As someone who's organising that event, I'd imagine you go through a pretty similar process where you wake up in the morning and think, oh God, it's FA Cup final day. There's a bit of excitement. There's a little bit of butterflies in the stomach. And then you're kind of going in there going, right, okay, hopefully everything goes according to plan. What sort of coping mechanisms did you have for a massive event like that, where it's kind of like the eyes of the world are on Wembley Stadium? You've been one of the people organising it, and you're kind of like hoping and praying everything goes according to plan.
If you hope and pray that things are going to go right, then you haven't done your job, in my opinion. That you do everything in the weeks leading up, and one of the tricks one of my previous bosses used to tell is check everything 3 times. So don't assume that you've done it once and it's done. Go through your list, go through your checklist, go through your plans 3 times. So we run the Welsh Business Awards, and when I took over the Business Awards last year, we had a handover document which was about 40 pages long for an evening. And one of my comments at that time was, I ran the Champions League final on less information. So sometimes less is more. You pass that information down to whoever needs that, but you have the oversight and the briefings to ensure. And if you're coming into those scenarios, it is on an event day, and you're hoping that things are going right, or praying that they don't go wrong, then, as I said, I don't feel as you've done your checks and your diligence. Having a brilliant team around you that you have confidence to go away and do that event delivery for you, because you do the planning, but you don't do the delivering. You've got a team, for Wembley Stadium or Club Wembley, there's 27,500 people, of which virtually half of those people will be in a restaurant of some description, or dining, or whatever that might be. And then you have the team around you that manage the patch, whether that be security, whether that be the hostesses or hosts that greet you on the way. So then the restaurants, the waiters, the waitresses, the bar staff. So all through that whole structure, that you can trust implicitly every single person to deliver that. Now, one of the things and then you should really have an easy day. And I mean, when I say it's an easy day, it's not an easy day, but you don't have to go from firefighting to firefighting to firefighting. At the start of my career, it was firefighting all the time, because you learn and you fail, and you take those principles of checking things 3 times, making sure that everything, and actually the worry and the coping mechanisms should be before the day. In terms of back in the day, it was probably you'd go and have a beer after the event, or that de-stress or talk. Now I think it's about being calm and taking that time to be able to process everything, think things through. I'm a great believer in the Stoic philosophy. So you kind of you plan what's in front of you, and really what you can only control, what you can control. So we very much do that in our business now, and I think that's one thing that I've learned over the years is you're putting a lot of these events in other people's hands that you've done all the hard work for. But you have to make sure that all of the information is right, so they can go away and do their job as well as they possibly can.
It's almost like being a general in the army sort of thing, isn't it? You've got the strategy, you've got the plans, and then you've got your people on the ground that are going and executing that. When you've got an event of that scale, you can't go and pour every glass of champagne, make every cup of tea, flip every burger, check every ticket.
Yep.
You've got to have your teams, and they've got their teams within their teams. And if
Yep.
everyone understands what our goal is, what our mission is, and then their own kind of individual sort of missions for the smaller groups, everyone's got that information to go away and do the best they can and deliver the best event.
Yeah. So like an event like the FA Cup final, I'll probably I would have attended 6 different briefings. One is the high level briefing, which is the day before. Then you pass that down to your management team. Then you pass that down to, you attend the security briefing. You'll then attend your catering briefing, your sales briefing, all the way down, where you impart all of that information, and then you hope that go back to the hope that they take it on. But it is the simplicity of the planning and the matrix that you give everybody, so they have all of the same information. One thing that I learned over a period of time was that giving people too much information actually isn't always the right thing to do. So just give them the information that they need for their area, for their patch, whatever it is. And if they need to come back for more information, they can bring that up and over and round. And then that's why you have that bird's eye view of the event.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
And you've touched on it a couple of times, so I want to move on to a Champions League final. So you were at the WRU and the Millennium Stadium / Principality Stadium when the Champions League final came to Cardiff in 2017. That was a huge event. Like at the time, I was working for the One Show on one of their stories, one of their packages about the stadium.
Yeah.
So I was down there with the guy that's got an office in the basement with a hawk that keeps away the birds and different things like that. Keris Matthews up on the roof, kind of talking about the stadium. And so I kind of saw a little bit of the planning and things were going on. Like there had to be a whole host of new seats put in for journalists, I think, because the amount of journalists that were coming. Champions League final was a completely different beast to other things, I'd imagine. And that event hadn't been held in that stadium before. Talk us through what it was like planning and putting together a kind of Champions League final and the difference between the other things you've done.
So, blimey. I was also involved with the Champions League of 2011 at Wembley.
Okay.
So I was there for that as well. But I think, and this is the difference, Twickenham is a unique stadium. Wembley is a unique stadium in its own right. But Principality or Millennium just has something utterly, utterly special about it. And I think that it comes from being Welsh. It comes from understanding that, everything points to Principality Stadium, Millennium Stadium. Everybody feels they own a part of that stadium in some way, shape, or form, being Welsh, and that utter pride in one building is just something you don't get in other stadiums. So in the lead up to the bid, it is probably where you need to start. It's a 3 or 4 year process. Wow. to get to that final. You have to have a UEFA license, which is a minimum standard within the stadium. So the WRU and Principality Stadium operations staff would have done all of that work to get it up to standard. So that would have been in the years leading up to that. So understanding the process of where you need to get to. But then when you get to the planning, it is a 12-month process. So from the moment where you know that you've won the bid, which generally is before the previous Champions League final, because then the road starts and the branding starts, and it gets to the last 16, and then it becomes the road to Cardiff. But being involved with that final was just really special, because for the city, we've done some huge events here in the city, the Heineken Cup finals, which I think is the Champions Cup now, concerts, etc. But this is literally the eyes of the world on your home. And it's a bit of an odd thing. Daniel have been to the stadium, and you kind of turn up, and you rugby games, and you see the atmosphere. For 300 odd days that you work at the stadium in between, it's quiet. So actually the event days are the anomalies. But leading up to the Champions League final, it just gears up and ramps up, and the expectation keeps going and keeps ratcheting up, because the 200 the Champions League final will have had 200 countries, journalists there, 200 million eyes on that stadium for the day. I can't even remember who played, because the Real Madrid and
Juventus, I think it was.
Yeah. And I think but that shows that we actually don't, as eventeers, we don't focus on the game. We focus on the delivery of the event. But it's a circus that comes to town, because you've got all of the space within the stadium, but also the event planning goes into Cardiff Rugby, and then it went into the Castle, and then into Butte Park with the Champions League sponsors village. So the enormity of planning that is beyond anything that I've been involved with previously. Wembley was you had your very specific role with the WRU, because of the size of the union. You're expected to do a lot more and be involved. So, being involved at that level was just phenomenal. And also dealing with UEFA, they have it's called a local organising committee. So they literally will parachute from one Champions League final into the planning of the next Champions League final. So they know the formats, they know what they need, they know what they want, but they then have to implement it in a different stadium with different capabilities every year. So the whole planning process is just the next level. But then the overview stuff becomes very minutely detailed as well. So when you talk about, I talked about handing that process over, you take that journey literally on a 12 months planning process, working out what you can do within the confines of your stadium, and then delivering it and finding the space. But then you will work with partners outside of the stadium. So Cardiff Council, the police, the ambulance service, Transport for Wales, that whole ecosystem of planning an event like that is, next level.
Incredible. And it was an amazing event. And just to go back to what you said about the stadium being special, like I know from that the one show film that we were making, the people that built the stadium built it with the same acoustics as the Sydney Opera House. They're the team that then went on to build the Spurs Stadium. I think they were starting to build the Spurs Stadium when that final was happening. So that stadium has been built with that kind of fan experience in mind, in terms of those acoustics. So it sounds even better than any other stadium. I think as proud Welshmen, kind of singing that national anthem in that stadium. It just sounds absolutely incredible at any time. But that Champions League final, the city of Cardiff was absolutely buzzing. And down in the bay, you had all the kind of sponsors in the bay. You had the
Yeah.
floating pitch. So I played on the floating pitch with some of the other kind
Right.
of Welsh media, and I missed about 15 sitters and Bryn Law shouted at me, "You've got to put one of them in soon, son." And I just kept missing. But yeah, it was an incredible event, and the one show was live down the bay. I think it was the day before the final, and it
Yeah.
was absolutely rammed. There was so many amazing things going on. It was a real spectacle. Is there a value on that for a city like Cardiff? Do you mean this brings in X amount of business, X amount of money? Like, kind of, how can you quantify what that does to a city to have an event like that? And the first Champions League final, or the first city to have both women's and men's Champions League final at the same time, with the women's one going on down at the Cardiff City Stadium a few days previous. How do you quantify what that does for a city?
Well, you can measure that with net spend, and it's been quite widely documented. It was a 45 million pounds spend, but it's that's the kind of direct measurement, and it's one figure. The ramifications and the ripple effect of something like the Champions League final is far wider than that. We can measure the direct benefit to Cardiff City itself, or city centre, which was that 45 million pound spend. But then, with the amount of hotels that are in Cardiff, it still didn't do enough for just the media and the VIPs, and so the fans had to then go and find accommodation elsewhere. So actually, the net spend will be wider. So Bristol would have benefited, Swansea would have benefited, Merthyr. So anything within about an hour's radius of Cardiff would have had a net benefit for that Champions League final. But then what you also get is the visitor experience, the stadium being so close to the city centre, out of the train, and you can see the stadium right in front of you. So you get the economic benefit that kicks on for many, many years afterwards. And that will be, people coming back because they enjoyed the experience so much. So the visitor economy benefits from that hugely. It opens the eyes of the world to what a great city Cardiff is. So then that benefit is that, well, if we can do the Champions League final, we can also do the Champions Cup final. We can also do other events. So it opens up the eyes to other event promoters to say, well, I'll now bring that event to Cardiff, because if they can do that, they can do this. And we're now seeing the benefit of that. The infrastructure improvements that have been made to the transport network, the improvement to the hotels. And this summer, just going into this summer, I think it was Pink the other night, it's Taylor Swift upcoming, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, a huge events calendar across the course of this year. But we've also got the benefits of all of the events in the castle. We've got the events in the barrage, in the bay now. We've got this huge infrastructure which you can only build off the back of events like the Champions League final, and the net visitor income from that. So never underestimate the power of sport and events. What they can actually deliver for city improvement deals.
Absolutely. And yeah, for me, going to the Principality Stadium to watch a sporting event, like you said, it being right there in the city centre is brilliant. I went down to Wembley to watch Cardiff in the League Cup final a few years ago against Liverpool. And it's kind of like a couple of hours in a minibus down there. Then you're drinking on the edge of London. Then you're getting on the tube for 25 minutes to get into Wembley. And then there's no pubs anywhere near Wembley. Then you're going in, then you're coming out. And having come out and lost, it was a long journey home then. And I know that when my stepfather, who's a Sheffield Wednesday season ticket holder, when they all come down for the playoffs in the Principality Stadium, when the new Wembley was being built, they absolutely loved the fact that they were just like, they were in a pub at 5-3, and then at 3 o'clock they were in the stadium kind of for kickoff. There was no kind of 40-minute journey on the tube and walking down Wembley Way. They were like, oh, starts in 5, down your pint, and in you go. I think that's quite unique with a massive stadium like that, isn't it? I know, again, at the Euros, There was the new Lyon Stadium, and it was built right outside the city, and it took ages to get there and ages to get out.
Yeah.
And the fan experience suffers then a little bit when you've got to travel 40 minutes to get there. And I think we waited for like 2 hours outside the Lyon Stadium to get a bus back into the city centre after losing to kind of Portugal after that amazing Euro 2016 kind of journey. And the fan experience just suffers a little bit when you've got that trek to or from the stadium. But in Cardiff, none of those problems. It's right there. Down your pint and you're in.
Well, a lot of credit has to be given to the likes of Dennis Gethin and Glanmore Griffiths for fighting for the National Stadium, as it was turning into Millennium Stadium, to stay where it was. The temptation with the planners was to move it outside of the city, but both of those guys, fought really, really hard and had the vision to be able to keep it in the city centre, because they knew the fan experience would benefit from that. Whether you can see the success and failure of Cardiff Rugby going to Cardiff City Stadium and now back at the Arms Park, because and are now benefiting from full stadiums again. Now, obviously, that's taken a little while, and the brand of rugby is far better than it was for a period of time. But that one journey, wherever you might be from in Cardiff, whether that be a train or bus or walk or car park, whatever it means, all of those transport links come to the city centre. So if you've got to go into the city centre and then back out again, it's that barrier. So, those guys, when they were planning and fighting for the stadium to be in the centre, really do need some credit of keeping it there. The fan experience of Cardiff, in my experience, it is by far the best. I've done the journey from Twickenham Station into Twickenham, which I know 20 minutes or so. Wembley into Wembley Park or Wembley Station. Wembley actually have their own train station as well for event days. But it's still that journey into Central, out again on the Jubilee or the Metropolitan. I know it too well. But it is that that journey, that experience. I think sometimes we underestimate that time with your mates as well, which is the big thing leading up to a rugby game, that you just wanted that camaraderie, that kind of mates coming together, taking the mick out of each other, enjoying a pint. And I think it's sport, whilst you live and breathe the performance of the athletes. Actually, I think the benefit of men coming together, and I will say men, although I know lots of families do go together, but that experience of men bonding is great for mental health, and I think we don't do it enough.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing quite like a sporting event to bring people together. And yeah, credit to those that fought to keep the stadium in the city centre, because I think it would have been easy to go, oh, there's a developer who'll buy this land off us at top dollar because it's in the city centre. This is prime real estate, and we'll buy a brownfield site on the outskirts of the city for next to nothing and build our stadium there. And that entire fan experience of going to the Principality Stadium is completely different, isn't it? So having it there in the city centre is really unique. Well, I think we've had a fantastic chat, and we talked about how sport has influenced business and the fan engagement and the fan experience of these different stadiums, and it's been a fantastic chat. So thank you very much for your time, Paul. Just before we kind of sign off, where can people find out more about yourself or about Chambers Wales?
LinkedIn. So find me there, Paul Butterworth on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, or Chambers Wales, which our website is cw-seswm.com. Chambers Wales, South East, South West, and Mid. But you can reach out to me or any of the team to find out more information.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for your time, Paul. And thanks to you guys at home that have been listening or watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you again on another episode. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Dan.
Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to the channel for more content.